First question we have for you is, why does an MLS exist? Why do we have an MLS at all? So if we go back, way back in time, before any of us were in the business, individual brokers would have their listings and they didn't have an ability to share them. So it's kind of like a car dealer. You want to buy a Ford, you go to a Ford dealer. If you want to go buy a Chevy, you go to a Chevy dealer. So if you want to buy a house from ABC Realty, you go talk to them. You want to buy it from XYZ Realty, you go talk to them. So then the broker started saying, wouldn't it be great if we had an ability to sell each other's listings? And so they created an MLS. And the primary reason the MLS existed was not for the sharing of the data, but for the sharing of compensation. So the MLS is an agreement between brokers to share compensation. That's the primary function of the MLS. Now we do that by sharing the data. So when there's in the MLS, it says that a compensation will be paid to you for representing the buyer on a property. That is a contract between the brokers saying, we agree we will pay that amount. And so it can't be changed once you're under contract. You can change it at any time prior to an offer coming in, up, down, whatever. But it is a contractual agreement by membership in the MLS. You've agreed that when you post a commission that you will in fact pay it to that cooperating broker. And then on top of that, we now exist so that we have the sharing of the data. We have the database. We have it searchable. We now push the listings out to multiple sources. There's probably 100 different places, to Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, et cetera, that the listings are now advertised on your behalf and things. But the primary function was to be offers of compensation. By the way, speaking of compensation, whenever you're in a group like this, you don't want to ever put numbers on commissions. So you don't want to say, I think we should all try to raise the commission rate to some number, because that's called price fixing. It's an antitrust violation when you're with competitors. If you're in your offices, you can talk all day about what commission rates should be, because in the eyes of the law, you're one entity. But when you're with people from a different company, you have to be very careful that you don't ever have a conversation that could lead to price fixing. So somebody might use a term, well, it's a normal commission. Well, there's no such thing as a normal commission. A commission rate is established between the broker and the client. So just something to be aware of whenever you're in meetings like this. Don't ever have discussions about compensation. It is a criminal offense for which you could actually go to jail if something happened on price fixing. All right, so how do we get to where we are with our rules and regulations and things? And we start with having a multiple listing service committee. And the committee has a chair, 12 to 14 members. They meet every month to talk about rules and regulations and technology and different things. So the rules start with the National Association of Realtors. They come up with a set of model MLS rules that they say everyone to the country that here's a model you can follow. There's a few things in it that are actually mandated to us based on some issues with the Department of Justice and things. The IDX rules, we have to adopt exactly the way NAR gives them to us. But the other rules come out, they're models. They're examples that we can follow. California then, their MLS committee, will look at this and say, okay, let's adopt them for what makes the most sense for those of us in California, because there's some things in the national rules that maybe we don't have to adopt exactly. And so we then have the California model MLS rules. Well, then our committee looks at it and says, well, let's write the rules exactly the way we want them to be. And we've added some things. The model rules don't have anything in there yet. It's coming to have a coming soon listing. So how do you notify people that you've taken a listing, but you're waiting for the painting to take place or the professional photographs or whatever it is you're waiting for? Is there a way to notify them? Well, we created a coming soon category. Like I said, it's being worked on right now at the state and national level, but we already have it in our rules. So we have things that aren't in those models. We have some things where we've changed them a little bit. For some of you, you might come from an MLS if you've been in the business before, where when you put out an attribute on an IDX display, Internet Data Exchange, where you have the ability to display all listings from all companies, the model rules say that you need to display the listing office and listing agent. Our rules only require you to display the listing office. So you have to give an attribution. This is a Sotheby's listing, a Berkshire Hathaway listing, a Village Properties listing, whatever it happens to be, has to be displayed on there, but you don't have to put down the individual agent. Okay, so the MLS committee, they also look at improvements in things, technology, programs. One of the things they've looked at recently is our tax data system is called Realist, that's in Flex. It's a pretty good system, but we found one that's better called CRS, Courthouse Retrieval System. So they are now going to be adopting that as of the first of the year. So you'll see things coming out with new training and things that has benefits that we don't have now. And the main thing for us is reliability. When you put a listing into the MLS, it requires you to put in the assessor parcel number. So you have to look that up and get that information. And once you do, it then ties that record to the tax records. And it goes through and auto-populates some of the fields, such as the address. And the reason for that is people would put in an address of 123 Main Street and spell out street, and then 123 Main Street ST, and it looks like it's two different listings. So by having it auto-populated, it always comes through exactly the same way, and we know it's the same property, and you're not having two different things. Because they would have one expire, then they'd come back and relist it with a slightly different name. They'd even intentionally misspell the street name on some of these streets to make it look like it's a different listing. So you can't do that now because it auto-populates. Well, because of that auto-population feature, Realist has to be up all the time for you to put a listing into Flex. And it was going down on us an average of twice a month. And so it's causing some real headaches. So that's the main reason we're changing over to CRS. But the nice thing is we're also getting some really nice benefits that we didn't have before. But it's the MLS committee. They come in and they interview these people. They look at it. I've got to tell you, they've been interviewing different companies for products to say, should we introduce them to our members, and finding no, that it's not worth it. And when I say introduce them, it would be a matter of paying for it through your dues to give it to all of you. And they're only going to spend your money if it really makes sense to do that. So one of the benefits you have with the MLS is that we have, I still call it breakfast at the beach because we're going to be going back to the beach someday, but right now we call it breakfast at the Rock because the Cabrillo Art Center is being remodeled. So we're meeting at the Rockwood Women's Club. It's the second Thursday of every month, and it is a great opportunity to get some training on some issue. We have speakers coming in each time. This last couple of weeks ago, we had some accountant come in and talk about how the new tax laws affect realtors and your clients. But things like that, after the mud flows, we had a geologist come in and explain to us what's happening with that. So on and on. There'll be good, timely information of what's going on will be presented. Affiliates get to make announcements, but the most important thing for you is you can announce your listings. I have a new listing of a 5-bedroom, 3-bath. It's got an ocean view, and it's $450,000. See, that would sell like that, wouldn't it? So you get a chance to talk about them. You also can talk about your buyer needs. I have a buyer that's looking for a house in the such and such school district with this number of bedrooms. There's nothing out there available. Does anyone know of a property that might be coming up? Because if you think about it, before a property hits the MLS, that client starts talking with the agent probably a week or two in advance to get a market analysis done and things and get the house prepared, whatever it is they have to do. So during that time frame, you might have a listing and somebody else says, oh, I've got a buyer looking for this. You might be able to make a connection right there in that room before the property even hits the market. You might say, well, there's 125 people on average there, and I have a little bit of trouble standing in front of 125 people and making an announcement. Well, there's something you can do about that, and that is you can get over it because it's in your client's best interest. If you think about it, isn't it a benefit to your buyer to make that presentation to help them find a house that's not even on the market yet? Isn't it in your seller's best interest to do word of mouth advertising? Because no matter how good our electronic advertising is, nothing beats word of mouth if you do a good job of presenting it. So I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek about you can get over it. We do have Toastmasters that meets here every Wednesday at noon. And so you could come into a Toastmasters class and learn about public speaking if you would like to do that. Okay, so we do have rules and regulations that you Oh, I already went through that, the model, so we've already covered that. I got ahead of myself. We also have a handout, Pathways to Professionalism, that you all have. I'm not going to go through the details of that. We'll talk about it again also in the Code of Ethics, but it just are things to aspire to, that you want to do a good job of respecting the public, real property, and your peers. So we utilize Flex MLS, and we have for a long time. We were an early adopter with Flex back when very few people were with them. When we first started with them, we were their large account at having probably 1,300 members. We now have about 1,600 members in our MLS. They now have many clients over 10,000 and larger. So that they have become one of the largest providers of MLS services in the nation. And the reason it's called Flex MLS is because it is flexible. You have the ability to change how you want your displays. Maybe you want price to be the first thing. Maybe you want district to be the first thing, or bedrooms. You can arrange how your display is going to look. It also gives us the ability to turn on and off functionality right here instead of having to get something programmed. Under our old system, we'd have to send in a request to do some programming. They would send back to us a bid of what it would cost to do that, and then we'd ask them to do it. And by that time, it was now a month later. Right now, Ani can go in, our MLS director, and just make a few changes, and boom, we have that field available to us if we need it. So it's got some great functionality like that. Some of the other functions that we have is an automatic email function. So you can do a search and save that search and say, I want to have, anytime a property that matches these criteria comes on the market, notify me and my client. And you can have it do that for you. So it'll just automatically send you an email and your client saying, new listing at 123 Main Street matches the numbers of bedrooms, baths, the pool, whatever it is that you're looking for. And so you can get out there right away and see that property. It also has a mass email function. We call it the bulk email system. And I'm assuming that you all are familiar with that, because once you've signed up, you get probably 30, 40 a day, something like that, coming in through the bulk email system. And it's people promoting their listings, talking about their buyer needs, things of that sort. So you have the ability to use that, and we'll go into the details of how that works. Has good searching capabilities. You can search on basically every field. If there's a field in the MLS, you can search to say, does this property match that field? So you might be looking only at properties with solar power, something like that. And you could just say, I'm looking for solar photovoltaic, and give me all the listings that match that. It has a functional market analysis program, good mapping, IDX capabilities, including for IDX, the Internet Data Exchange. If you have your website, you want to be able to have people search right from your website so they don't have to go someplace else. There's a free IDX solution through Flex. There are about 50 different providers that have IDX solutions that look different and have different functionalities you might want to look at for a payment. But we do have a free solution from Flex MLS. And then Flex MLS has their mobile app, and it's getting better all the time. If you haven't downloaded that from the Play Store on Google or the iTunes on iPhones, you would want to have that on your smartphone so you can do searching right there in the field. And many more functionalities that you'll find within them. So a couple of things I want to talk about, and that is, I already mentioned the CRS courthouse retrieval system. I just threw some things on a slide so I wouldn't forget to talk about them. But also is RPR, Realtors Property Resource. That's available to you through your membership of the National Association of Realtors. And what it does, it has information on almost every property in the nation that you could look up and find out what's going on. There's certain areas still that they don't have, but there's something like 80% of all listings in the nation are within RPR right now. We have RPR deep linked into our MLS. So once you're in the MLS using single sign-on, you can just go directly to RPR and do your searching from the MLS without having to log in and outside. And then when you're in a listing, you can click the RPR button and it will go to the RPR information on that property. So we have that capability. It's at NAR RPR. I can't remember if it's .com or .org, but you need to log in the first time there, and then once you have, you can set it up to do through single sign-on. If you have any questions, Ani, our MLS director, can help you with that. The other thing I want to mention is on advertising rules, we had a change about a year ago where for neighborhood market data, where you would send out things to your farm area, it used to be that you couldn't put down addresses and price and things of active listings. Because what happens if you do that, you're actually advertising someone else's listing without their consent. Well, the rules changed from NAR, CAR on down, saying you should be able to put in active listings as long as you give proper attribution to the listing company. So now you have a neighborhood report you're sending out, and in this neighborhood, there's 5 homes that are currently for sale, 6 that sold so far this year, 3 that are pending, something like that. On those active and pending listings, since they haven't closed yet, you need to show who the listing office is. So, and it can't be with an asterisk and a little thing down on the bottom. On the active listings, it has to be that it's on the same line in the same size type as everything else. So the address, bedrooms, baths, listing office, probably price, so whatever information you want to have in there, but the listing office has to be there in the same size. And if it's a 2-liner because of the amount of information you're giving about the property, then it has to be within those 2 lines. But you can't do it in a smaller size. You can't hide it. And what was happening is people were putting them in, and it was looking like, oh, wow, you're a really busy agent. You have 5 listings in our neighborhood. Well, you didn't have any of the 5. You're just reporting that 5 listings exist in the neighborhood, so you need to put on there who they're listed by. So that's just a reminder to cover that for you. Okay, so let's talk about the listing policies and procedures, and there's a couple test questions that are going to go along with this as we go through. So I'll highlight those as we get to them. Oops, didn't mean to make that show up on that screen. Just wanted to get it out of my way. And I can't get it back now. Let me come over here and grab it. All right. Forget about doing things on a split screen. All right. So, and for some reason when I do that, it wipes out my ability to advance my slides. There we go. So from the time you take a listing, you have 2 business days to enter that listing into the system. So you're out today, you meet a client, they want to list their house at 123 Main Street, which, by the way, that property gets listed a lot, doesn't it? 123 Main. So you have that, you're going to list that property for sale. It needs to be entered into the service by the end of the day on Wednesday. No, actually, you have today and tomorrow. Yeah, at the end of the day tomorrow. Say two full business days after. Now, what if you don't have the property ready? Maybe they want to take you need to get a professional photographer out or something. We'll talk about that in a second of what you can do about it. But that is a test question that it's 2 business days to enter a listing into the system on a new listing. The second thing is that when you have a status change, it needs to be done within 1 business day. And that also is a test question for you. That you have 1 business day to enter status changes. So what that means is you have a price change. You've got to get that in the MLS within the next day. If you have a property that has a contingent sale, it has an accepted offer, it needs to be reported by the next day. And that's when we're going to have sellers say a lot to you, oh, well, we're not sure that it's going to close because they haven't done their inspections yet. They've got 17 days, so don't report it as contingent for 17 days. Well, you can't do that. You have to report it within 1 day per the rules. And they might say, but you have a duty to do what I want you to do. And it's like, yes, I do. And I also have to abide by the rules of the MLS. And if you look right in your listing contract, it says this information will be reported to the MLS, and you sign that. So just be aware of that. You might want to have that discussion with your clients at the time you take listing contracts. You know, make sure you read through those contracts and you're able to explain to them what they're agreeing to. But that is in there, and it's important because if you think about it, say somebody had that situation and they don't report that sale. you've got a client now looking for property. You find this is going to be the perfect house for your buyer. You go out and show it to them. And then you call the agent and say, oh, my client's really interested, wants to make an offer on your house. Oh, well, we had an accepted offer on that 2 weeks ago. It's like, what do you mean you had an accepted offer 2 weeks ago? It's still showing active in the MLS. Oh, yeah, my client didn't want me to put it in as contingent. Well, the system doesn't work. I mean, imagine if every listing had a 17-day delay on when it got reported. So you have to put them in. What would you do if you found a listing that's not reported as contingent, but it's still showing active, but you call the agent, he says it's contingent? On every listing, when you're in the MLS, there's a thing called an error report, where you can just click on that and send it in saying this property is contingent per the listing agent, but still showing as active. They then would be fined $100 for having not reported it. But it's a self-reporting function. If you ever do an error report, it goes directly to the listing agent and the listing broker anonymously. And it goes to our MLS director, Ani, with your name so she can get back to you to let you know if there's anything. Because every now and then somebody would file an error report and there's nothing wrong. And she needs to be able to let them know, no, it's actually okay for them to do whatever it is. Okay, so I mentioned, what if you have a new listing and you want to get it entered into the system within 2 days, but it's not ready? You're waiting for some painters to come out. You're waiting for the professional photographer. So let me give you just a personal recommendation. Somebody says to you, I'm ready to list my house with you, but I need to get it, and you go through the house and say, you really should get it painted, you get the carpets clean, you should do these things to fix it up a little bit, and you realize it's going to be about a week. So do you say, well, so that I don't violate the rules, I'll come back in a week and sign the listing? My recommendation is no. If you have a client wanting to sign a contract with you, sign it today. But then you fill out a form called an SELM, Seller Excludes Listing from the Multiple Listing Service. By the way, that's a test question. What is the form you use? It's an SELM, Seller Excludes Listing from the Multiple Listing Service. Is the form you'd use to say the seller doesn't want the property in the MLS yet. In our office, when I owned a real estate company, we had an agent one time that had just that circumstance come up. The house needed painting. So the agent said, let's just wait until you have the house ready, then I'll come back and sign the paperwork. In the meantime, let me recommend a painter to you. And gave him a recommendation. The painter came out and started painting the house and said, I really like this house. I happen to be looking for a house right now. How much is this one? Told them how much they were asking, and he says, well, that's great. Maybe I can just buy it from you directly before you put it on the market, and you can save commissions, and we can both save a little. And they, in fact, did that. So the agent, by not listing, the property had no rights to compensation, and it was the painter he recommended that ended up buying the house directly from the seller. So my recommendation to you because of that is, if a seller wants to sign, have them sign, and then fill out an SELM form saying do not submit for the number of days you think it'll be until the painting can be done, carpets cleaned, photographer is in and out, whatever it's going to be. So we have a system that we call broker load for putting our listings into the MLS. And for us, it doesn't matter to us if that means the brokerage puts them in and they have an administrator in the office, or the individual salespeople put them in. So the way the system's set up is it's broker level unless that brokerage tells us otherwise. And about half the companies in town, their agents do all the inputting. And about half the companies in town, they want to have their office administrator put them in, so they have an extra eye on them, reading the description, making sure there's no antitrust issues, there's no fair housing issues, things like that. So check with your broker. When I take a listing, if I have status changes, do I make them personally, or does the company do that for me and I bring them the information for somebody to input? So that's an individual broker decision on how they want to do that. So if you or your brokerage want us to put the listing in for you, you could bring it here and we will do that for a $50 fee. Now, I've been saying that for years. I don't think that we've had that happen. We did originally when back in my day, we would actually fill out a form and bring it here to put our listings into the MLS along with a $15 check. And that was 30 years ago that we were doing that. And once we got to a computerized system where it could be broker loaded, there were some agents that, but I don't know computers. I don't want to have to do that. I still want to bring my paper form in. And so we would let them pay to come in. But in the last 5 or 10 years, it's like, it's all broker load. All right, so let's talk about some of the guidelines of what you can and can't put in your listings. So there are public fields and private fields. So in the private fields, you have a lot of discretion as to what you put in there about who to contact, here's a phone number, things like that. But in the public fields, you've got to be very careful because this is the information that's going to display on IDX sites, Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, etc. So if you think about it, that's where you would want to have your name and phone number because you want it to be displayed everywhere. But if you have an IDX site that you're running, you don't want every other agent in town having their name and phone number on your site, do you? No, you don't. So because of that, our rules say you can't have any of your contact information viewable in the public areas. So the public description and the photographs. So what you can't have in the public area is not only your information, but any of the property owner's name, phone number, or address, showing instructions or location of a lockbox, reference to a burglar alarm or security system or gate code, reference to the property being vacant, the type of listing, compensation, and then any of your information. So it's pretty simple. The remarks section should be describing the property that's for sale. But then you do have a private remarks section where you might want to say, there's a security gate to get in, the gate code is. But you don't put that out to the public, you only give that to the other agents in what's called the private remarks. So I think that should be relatively clear there. So what happens if your listing is not in compliance, if we have some kind of violation? Well, there's a fine structure, and it starts at $100. And by the way, that's a test question. That what is the initial fine, and that starts at 100. If you are ever fined and you're saying I shouldn't have been, you can call for a hearing and say I want to have a hearing to say that I did not actually violate this. And one of the things that happens is if there is an issue, it's going to be emailed to you. And almost all issues, the only one that the MLS committee has said we want to have an immediate fine on is the one of not notifying about a contingent sale. That is an automatic fine. But everything else, something that's wrong in the listing and an error report is filed, we'll give you 24 hours to make the correction. If you don't make the correction, then the fines would start. So it's important that you make sure your email address is correct with us. Because sometimes people will change offices and they'll forget to notify us that although they changed offices, they now have a new email address. And so there might be an error report filed. It goes to their old email address. They don't get it. They don't get it changed within the proper time. And then we might even have escalating fines over time for them not making the corrections. So make sure that your email address is always correct with us. Also, the billing is all done through email. So if you don't get your bill, you might have to pay late fees and penalties and be shut off. We have every year where somebody will call us and say, for some reason, Flex isn't working for me. It's like, well, did you pay your bill? No, I don't think I got one. Have you checked your email? Well, I've got 1,000 unread emails. It's like, well, one of them says you got to pay your bill or you're going to get shut off. And so you got to pay to play, right? So that's in there. Just so you know, the MLS is billed twice a year. So January 1st and July 1st is when your bills are due. We send them out in the beginning of December and the beginning of June saying it's going to be due, and you'll get 3 or 4 reminder notices before this actual due date if you haven't paid yet. So just be aware of that. If for some reason something went into your junk email and you didn't get it, just know that you have to pay January 1st and July 1st. And that's for both the lockbox and the MLS. Your association dues are only due annually on January 1st. So let's look at some of these public remarks in this example and see if there's anything that's not right with them. So we have a house here that has its beautiful, totally remodeled family home in a quiet neighborhood, walking distance to All Saints by the Sea Church. Seller's very motivated. X% to selling agent plus an extra X thousand dollars if escrow closes by July 30th. It's easy to show. Property is vacant. Private gate code is. Call listing agent for appointment. Anything wrong in there? Like everything, right? Yeah, start that one over. Okay, so let's take it sentence by sentence. We have a beautiful, totally remodeled family home in a quiet neighborhood. Anything that's wrong in there?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally remodeled.
Totally remodeled. Yeah. I mean, if you think about that, something that's totally remodeled. So I'm trying to think, I've remodeled houses before. If you take it down to the studs and replace all the wiring and all the plumbing lines, but you keep the studs, is that totally remodeled?
No.
Well, no, you still got old studs, right? Okay, what if I scrape it down, I start with this, everything down to the slab and then rebuild it from there? Is that okay? No, because you still have an old slab. Because what would totally remodel? Wouldn't that be a new house? Be new construction, yeah. So you just say it's a new house if it's a new house. Otherwise, it might be extensively remodeled, beautifully remodeled, whatever you want to call it. But totally remodeled would be not actually possible. So just be aware of things like that. So it's not an MLS rule as much as it's an advertising issue that would come under Article 12 of the Code of Ethics. Can you call it a family home? Is that okay? And the answer is no, you can't. Under fair housing laws, you can't try to describe who you think the buyer should be. So to call it a family home, you're implying that someone with a family should buy that house. Could a single person buy the home? Yeah. Could a retired couple? Could it be a group of people buying it that want to live together? Yes, of course. Anybody has the right to buy it. If they got the money, they're your new best friend, and we let them buy the house. So to call something a family home is actually a violation of fair housing laws. How about saying it's in a quiet neighborhood? And the answer is, if it is, that's okay. But there might be something like, well, it's quiet every time I'm there, but I've never been there when the train went by and they blow their whistle just 1 block away. Or I've never been there at night when the dog barks all night long. So be very careful using terminology like that before you put in. I would probably just try to avoid calling something a quiet neighborhood just because of those issues. How about walking distance to All Saints by the Sea Church? Yeah, we've got 2 discrimination things in that one line there. First is to say it's by All Saints by the Sea Church, we're implying that someone of that denomination would want to buy that house. So is it near the Jewish synagogue? Is it near the Greek Orthodox Church? Is it near the Baptist Church? Whatever. You're implying that someone of that denomination would buy it. The only exception in Santa Barbara to say something is near the mission, because the mission is a historic landmark. You're not saying somebody needs to be Catholic to buy near the mission. It's just describing what part of town the house is in. But to try to describe it by a church is an inappropriate move in other areas. How about saying it's walking distance? You might want to say it's near to shopping, it's near to bus lines, close to the beach. But to say it's walking distance, a couple things. One is, what's walking distance mean to different people? It's some people that mean they can walk a block, and some people might walk 2 miles and be comfortable with that. But the second thing is, what if somebody is differently abled and they're in a wheelchair? Could they say you're discriminating against them by referring to it as walking distance? So the prudent thing there would be just to say it's near whatever it is you're describing. Seller is very motivated. Well, when we get into Code of Ethics, we're going to talk about that. If the seller says to you, tell everybody I'm motivated, then you're okay. But if you're motivated to get the property sold and the seller hasn't said to say that, what do you hear if somebody says to you, the seller's very motivated? Does that mean they're holding out for full price? No, it means they're going to take less, doesn't it? So your fiduciary duty to your client is that you help them get top dollar for their home. So if the seller didn't say to you, tell people I'm motivated, to say the seller is motivated is actually a violation of Article 1. of the Code of Ethics. So to put X% to the selling agent and an extra X thousand dollars of escrow closes by July 30th, can't put offers of compensation in the MLS. So it's inappropriate to have that there. How about if that's in the private remarks? Is that now okay? Because in the private remarks, you can say what the commission is. That would be fine, because you might need to spell it out sometimes of what the compensation rate is. There is a field to fill in where you put in a percentage or dollar amount in that field, but sometimes there are circumstances. There was, I know one I saw recently. It was a bank-owned property, and the bank is saying it's this percentage minus this amount of processing fee. But they have a standard fee they charge. Well, you can't fill that in the regular box, so you have to put that in the private remarks to notify the other agent that it's really not a full percentage commission, it's a little bit less. But what about this, if you had $1,000, $2,000, X thousand dollars if escrow closes by July 30th? Can you have a special bonus to an agent? The answer is yes and no. You can have a special bonus. You can say it's X% plus X thousands of dollars. That's okay. But not if it's tied to a conditional situation. So if you say it's only offered if it closes by July 30th, then you're going to try to get that property to close by July 30th. That may not be in your client's best interest. So it's wrong to, per our MLS rules, to have a conditional offer of compensation.
So what if the seller says it's okay to put that on there?
Then the MLS rules still preclude it. The MLS rules say you cannot have conditional offers of compensation. So what you could say is it's X% plus X thousands of dollars, period, then it's okay. But to say if it closes by July 30th, you cannot put it in on, compensation cannot be tied to a condition. Now, it's not illegal to do that, but it violates the MLS rules. Just to be clear, if you'd have outside of the MLS, you want to make a conditional offer of compensation, we'll pay you extra commission if you can close this by this date. That's okay if it's not done through the MLS. The worst one I ever saw was an offer of compensation saying they'll give you a bonus if you bring a full price offer. Now think about that for a minute. Your buyer could have bought the property for that much less had you not brought a full price offer, but you're taking the money instead of giving it as a benefit to your client. I think you might have a problem with that one. I know your client's not going to like you too well if they ever found out about it. So it is inappropriate in the MLS to have any conditional offers of compensation. To say anything about how to show it, easy to show, property's vacant, gate code, etc., can't be there, including calling listing agent for appointment. So here's another thing that's an interesting one, and that is in your photographs, you can't have them branded. So sometimes people will have virtual tours, they want to attach them. You have to have a non-branded virtual tour that doesn't have your name and phone number at the end. And most virtual tour companies will create two for you. One that you use on your website that does have your name, your picture, whatever you want to have about yourself embedded in the virtual tour, and then a clean one that goes into the MLS. The other one is when you take a picture of the house, if the for sale sign is already up and you can read the sign in the photograph of what company it is and what the phone number is, who the listing agent is, that's a violation. So you need to either take the pictures before the sign goes up, take it from an angle where you can't read the sign, or just take the sign down while you take your pictures. So just be aware of that. You can't have your for sale signs displayed in your photographs.
I've known that, but what's the reasoning behind that? If us as agents pay for all of that, why?
And the reason is, say you have an IDX site. So you're telling all your clients, go to yourname.com or .realtor, you can do that today, to search for properties. And now as they search, the listing agent's information is displayed right there in the photograph. So now your client who came to your site to search for property says, oh, I might as well call the listing agent because I might be able to get a better deal. And it drives them away from you. So that's why not. So we want to level the playing field within IDX and things. Now, in ads in the paper, everywhere else, you want your name, your phone number, everything displayed as prominently as possible. but in the MLS, it can't be displayed. Okay, so let's talk about categories of listings. And we have a primary listing, and then we have another possibility. So the primary listings are in the correct district and property type. It's a single-family home, so it's listed as home or estate, and it's listed in area 15, area 20, whichever would be the appropriate one, 15 being east of state, 20 being west of state. But we also have the ability to do a secondary listing, so you might want to put it in a different district. Let's look at this building as an example. This was at one point in time a house, built in 1906. Pretty spectacular house, don't you think it would have been back then? So where in town do you find other really large, older homes? They're all in the Upper East. We happen to be west of State Street. We're still east of the freeway, but areas 15 and 20 don't divide at the freeway, they divide at State Street. So officially, this building would have to be, if it was a house, we'd have to list it in area 20 because that's where it needs to be. But I want to put it where the competition is so people are going to find it if I'm listing this. So I'm going to pay an extra $40 for a secondary listing and put it also in area 15 so it shows up along with all those Upper East houses that are similarly priced. Because in area 20, there probably wouldn't be hardly anything else of this price range in area 20. Because that's Mesa, West Side. You might have something on the Mesa Hill with a view that might hit the same price range. But otherwise, it's really going to be competitive with the area 15 houses. So it would make sense to pay the extra $40 and do what's called a secondary listing. The other thing you can do on a secondary listing is if it has something where it's a different property type. So maybe you have a house that's in an R2 zone and it has a 3-bedroom house and a studio apartment. So you need to put that under residential income because it's 2 rental units on an R2 lot, so that needs to be in the residential income section. But maybe the best buyer for that house would be somebody looking for a single-family home with guest quarters. So you might want to also put it in under single-family home. If you want to do that, you can do that. It's an extra $40. Whenever you have a secondary listing, you need to make sure you mark it in there that it's a secondary listing, because otherwise we're going to statistically show that 2 houses sold when only 1 in fact sold. So make sure you check the box if it's secondary. And you might say, well, how do I pay the $40? Do I mail it in first? How do I get it set up? Don't worry about it. Just do a secondary listing. The system will catch that a secondary listing was entered and an invoice will get generated and sent to you a short time after. So just go ahead and put it in and make sure you pay the $40 though, so you don't get your service shut off for having outstanding dues. If it's a co-listing where it's 2 agents that have listed the same property because it's a divorce maybe and the husband and wife can't decide on anything, including which agent to use, and so they have 2 agents from different companies listing one property, that should only be 1 entry. That's not the purpose of a secondary listing. And it's important for statistical accuracy that you make sure that it gets marked as a secondary, because otherwise we're going to show that 2 houses sold instead of 1. So this is a test question also. Let's see if I can get this to close up a little bit. So every listing must first be entered in the correct info as primary listing. Listings and be added. How many times can it be added? 1 more time. So only as a secondary listing for a listing fee of how much, and that's $40. Okay, so let's talk about just some showing courtesies. As a listing agent, be sure your showing instructions are accurate. You know, how is it that somebody's supposed to see this house? We've had things come in where somebody marked a house as lockbox go. I mean, you don't have to call anybody first, just go show up and go show the house. And they get there and open the door and there's people living there. And the agent goes, oops, I guess I messed up. I should have called it lockbox call first. I guess I did that wrong. Well, yeah, the client wasn't too happy about that. But so make sure it's properly marked. If there's anything unusual, use the private remarks, such as if the lock box is hidden, put that in there. So it might be that here's an exterior door, and because you're hanging a lockbox on here is going to keep a screen door from closing, you have to find some other location. So you come back over here and put it on a hose bin. That's far enough to call that hidden, because the agent's going to stand there looking at the door going, I don't see a lockbox. I'm not sure how to get in here. So just put in the private remarks, turn around, and the lockbox is on the hose bib behind you. Something like that, to make it obvious. If the instructions are appointment agent, be accommodating. You're going to get times where the seller says, I want you to be here whenever my house is shown. Make sure it's you or someone from your office, so in case you have a conflict, because you're going to get a call from somebody saying, I've got a client flying in from San Francisco. I think this house will be great for them. We need to see it. They're only in town this afternoon. They've already previewed other houses. I know this is the right kind of thing for them. Can we see it at 3 o'clock? And you're going like, oh man, I can't be there at 3 o'clock today. I've got other commitments. Well, can someone from your office be there? Because you need to help your client out with finding, getting the best buyer possible into their house for them. So it's tough sometimes. You have a marked appointment agent because you're busy. You're doing other things, and what being busy might be my kid's in a little league game or something. Well, that's important stuff too, but you need to be accommodating to get somebody to show that property if you can't do it. Remind your occupants to hide jewelry, medications, other things. It doesn't happen often, but every couple of years we'll get a situation where prescription drugs are taken out of medicine cabinets. So if somebody has something where they've got some painkillers or something, have them not put them in an obvious place in their house when their house is on the market. Because somebody might go in, can I use the restroom? And when they're in there, they start opening the medicine cabinets and drawers and looking for stuff like that. I remember doing an open house one time and walking through the house before anybody else came in and finding that the seller had left a wad of cash sitting on top of his dresser. It's like, I can't leave it there. It's too tempting. So I took it and I stuck it down in his stock drawer. And when I finished the open house 3 hours later, my memory isn't 3 hours long, and so I forgot to put his money back up on top. So I got a call from him saying, hey, somebody stole my money. I said, oh no, I did that. I hid it so it wouldn't get stolen. It's in your sock drawer. Just look right below where it was, one drawer down, and it's in there. I'd rather get that call saying that than realizing it actually did get stolen because I was careless and left it sitting out where it's obvious. Okay, showing instructions for, if you're the showing agent, if the instructions are LBCF, stands for lock, box, call first, be sure to call before entering the property and leave a message if no one's home. There's going to be times you say, you're calling, it's 10 to 10 right now, you want to show at 10:30, you call, no one's home, I guess it's okay, I can just go use the lockbox, and so you just hang up without leaving a message. Don't do that, because it could be the owner is out for a run. They're going to come home at about 10:20. They're going to jump in the shower, and that's right when you're going to show up to show the house. So always leave a message. Hi, this is Bob Hart. It's 10 to 10 on Monday. I'd like to show your house today around 10:30. If you're not there, I'll just use the lockbox. If there's any problems with that, give me a call back. Here's my cell phone number. Real easy to do, but just be courteous. And then the next thing is when you do show the house, leave a business card that you were there. Don't just show up, look at the house, and leave, because that seller is going to be in there. I've had sellers literally start looking across the carpet to see if there's footprints because somebody said they're going to show the house, but there was no card or evidence. So they were saying, did they really show up? Did they not show up? That seller needs to know. If you've left them a message saying you're going to show the house, then leave a card saying you were there. And the nice thing to do is on your card write thank you and the date and time. It's just a nice professional thing to do. Think about it. If you were selling your house, wouldn't you appreciate that somebody let you know they were in your house? So make that a habit. Have plenty of business cards. You should. This is one business where I know I used to order business cards a couple thousand at a time, and I have to reorder every couple months because you want to be constantly giving cards out to people. You never know where your next deal is going to be coming from. So don't be one of the things I always told my agents was there's no such thing as a successful secret agent, right? So you need to let people know they're in the business. Give your cards out to anybody you see. I know people that would, every time they'd pay their bills, they would just drop a card in because you just never know who might need to buy a house somewhere someday. You know, even out of town, they might call you and you help get a referral fee by helping them find an agent or something. All right, so leave a business card. Turn off all the lights, close the doors and windows if you turned them on. So you always want to show a house in its best light. So when you get there, the first thing you want to do is start just going through the house and flipping on all the lights. Maybe opening the blinds, things of that sort. When you're done, you need to close it back up. Leave it the way you found it. So if you got there and the lights were on, I would leave them on, unless you know otherwise. I mean, it might be that you call the client and they're home and they say, oh yeah, 10:30 will be fine. I'll leave all the lights on for you, but I'm going to be out. Can you turn them off when you leave? Sure, no problem. But I know as a seller, I've had times before where I had 4 showings scheduled in one day. And so when I left for work in the morning, I turned every light on in the house. I wouldn't just leave it looking good for every showing. And if somebody on the first showing shut the lights off, then they've defeated what I'm trying to do for showings 2, 3, and 4. So my philosophy has always been, if you find it with the lights on, leave the lights on. If you find the lights off, make sure you turn them back off, unless you know otherwise. And if you ever have a question, call the listing agent. See what they want you to do. Because it might be that you go through the house and you find the back door is unlocked. Well, are they just out for a little bit and they don't take a key with them and that's how they come and go? And you're going to lock them out if you lock that door? Do you lock it? Do you leave it unlocked? My philosophy is, and this is not an MLS rule or anything, but my philosophy is I'd much rather come back and have to open the door to let somebody in that I locked out than to have to find out and have them say, well, the house was burglarized sometime in the last week and we've checked the lockbox and you were the last person to have access to that house. You go, yeah, the back door was unlocked, so I left it unlocked. Well, why would you do that? Now their house got burglarized. Do you think I have a problem? I don't want to ever have that problem. I don't want to, aid and abet a commission of a crime. So, again, everybody's got cell phones these days. Call the listing agent. Found the back door unlocked. They go, yep. These clients always leave the back door unlocked too. You can just leave it unlocked. It's okay. Okay. You've reported to the listing agent. They said it's okay. Now you're fine. But absent something like that, I would lock it up. Okay. But most of all, think safety. We haven't had any serious issues in Santa Barbara, but there have been serious issues in the nation, where realtors have met somebody at an empty property that's in a remote area. There was a woman in Georgia, Beverly Carter, who had a call from a husband and wife saying, we'd like to see a house. And they said which one they wanted to see. She knows that it's an empty house in a remote area, so she tells her husband where she's going. Tells him what time she's going to be there. Says, if I don't call you back by a certain time, try calling me. I want you to know where I am, what I'm doing, whatever. She did all of the good protocol things. And these people tried to kidnap her for ransom, thinking, we want to make some money. Who has money? Oh, realtors have money. See, they don't know. They don't know the definition of a broker, right? So anyway, they tried to kidnap her, and she tried to fight them off, and in the fight, she got killed. When it first happened, we all kind of assumed it was a sexual assault situation. It wasn't. It was a kidnap for ransom. So now there's a Beverly Carter Foundation. In that town in Georgia, no one goes out and looks at property until they come to the office, meet with the agent and the broker, give them a copy of their driver's license before they ever go out to see property, etc. So talk with your broker about what they want you to do. But most brokers in town will tell you, if you've never met this client before, it seems a little hinky to you, they want to go see an empty house in a remote area, most brokers say, I have no problem with you saying our company policy is you have to come to the office and meet me at the office first. That's our company policy. And if they refuse to come meet you at the office, maybe it's a good thing you're setting that policy. And it might be they're a real buyer, but they just don't want to have to drive into whatever. But if they're a real buyer, they'll come in. But just be aware of things like that. And it's not an issue only for women. There's a gentleman by the name of Gene Lentz that worked in Pleasanton. And Gene's a big man. He's as tall as me, but he probably outweighs me by at least 50 pounds. He's a big guy. He's like a linebacker. He did not hold an open house. He had a house listed in the upper end in Pleasanton and had a guy call and say, I want to see that house. I want to just meet you there. So Gene thought, well, it's a little unusual, just meet me there, but okay, I'll do that. So he meets the guy there and starts showing him the house, and he just immediately doesn't feel real good about this guy. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that's going to be buying a couple $1 million house. And so one of the first things he asked is to see the basement. And this house had a basement. And Gene said, the seller doesn't want me to be showing the basement. And the guy keeps looking through the house a little bit, and he says, you know, I'm interested in this house, but before I buy it, I'd want to see the basement. And Gene says, I'm sorry, I can't show you the basement. And they ended up parting ways. In the meantime, Gene's doing good defensive issues. He's not ever going into a room ahead of the buyer to where he can be pushed in and have a door closed behind him. He's always letting the buyer go first. By the way, that's a good habit anyway. Let them see the house at their speed. Don't lead them through a house. Let them see the house the way they want to see it, in the order of rooms they want to see, whatever, and then you can help explain things to them as you go. But he was keeping his distance, letting the guy go first, making sure because he just didn't feel right about this guy. He found out 2 weeks later the man was in jail, that he was arrested for beating men to death to steal their wallets, rings, and watches. So it's not just a woman's issue, it could be a man's too. So just be aware. Be aware of your surroundings. When you drive up to an open house, look around. Is there something looking unusual? Is there somebody lurking in the bushes? I mean, just take a quick glance. The tough thing is you drive up to an open house, you look around, and there's somebody waiting in the car across the street. That looks suspicious. But think about that. You advertise a 1 o'clock open house, maybe they got there at 12:50. They're waiting for you to show up at 1 o'clock to start the open house because they're really an excited buyer. So just because somebody's sitting in a car outside of an open house doesn't mean they're lurking. But go with your gut. If it doesn't feel right, just be aware is the main thing. Be aware. We also have a safety feature within CentralLock that you can program it to, through your smartphone, ask you to check in. So it's like, okay, I see you just open a lockbox, and at 5 minutes it says, are you okay? And you have to say yes. And if you don't say yes, it's going to automatically call who you've designated it to call. Call your spouse, call your office, call someplace, saying that you have an issue. But that feature exists right through our CentralLock app. Okay, so let's talk about these MLS bulk emails. So if you want to send something out to everyone, how would you do that? Let me go back. So you're going to start with, on this upper line where it has MLS Office Broadcast Send To, it has everyone in the Santa Barbara MLS. That's how most people are going to do it. They're going to send it to everyone. But you can go down and you can send it to everyone within an office. And you might pick 2 offices. So it might be you want to send something to everyone in your own office. You don't have to know their email addresses. Just go into Flex and go down, I want to send to everyone in ABC Realty. Or you can do it to individuals. You might say, I want to send it to the 5 people that showed my house in the last week. You can find them in their individual emails and click on those 5. Once you've clicked on something, though, you have to hit that add button over there. If you don't hit the add button, they won't go over. So that recipient list right now is empty. It needs to have something in it for it to work. So if you click everyone in the Santa Barbara MLS, it's still empty until you hit the add button. Once you hit the add button, it goes over there. Now you can send it out to everybody. So you would fill in the subject of what the subject is. It's a new listing. It's whatever it's going to be. And then the body of the message. So one of the things you want to do is in this subject, it's going to have a drop down you pick, but then on the next line, you can put down property address and price. Because if you think about it, if you're getting 30 or 40 emails a day, do you want to read every one of them that somebody says, this is a great new listing? Well, how do I know it's great for what I'm looking for? But if you know where in town it is and what the price is, and you know, oh, I've got a buyer looking in that price range in that part of town, I'm definitely going to read that one. So my recommendation is always put down the address and the price of the property in your subject line. You'll get more people that, you may not get as many people read your email, but you'll get the people that matter reading your email, and that's what's really important. So before I go to the quiz, let me just talk about it for a second. Anybody feel like overrun, you're getting too many? So there's things you can do. One is you can say, I don't ever deal in rentals. I don't care about them. And you can set your parameters in Flex to say, only send me ones that are properties for sale. Eliminate all the rentals and rental needs if you want to do that. Or it might be, I only want new listings, but don't send me other ones where people are just marketing. So you can actually set your parameters. There's another thing you can do, and this is one I actually recommend most highly, and that is if you're using Outlook or Gmail or wherever, you can set up a rule with them. So I use Outlook. So I have a rule in Outlook that says anything that comes in that says MLS member mail, put it into a separate folder. So I still get all of them, but they're in a separate folder. So now I just open that folder whenever I want to read them. But in the meantime, all my other emails aren't just pushed down the page so fast that I miss something that's more important to me than these bulk emails. So I still get them all, but I check them when I want to check them, and then my regular emails are segregated and don't get, like I say, pushed down the page rapidly because of that. So it's a fairly easy thing to do. You can just Google how to set up a rule in whatever mail service you have and set up a rule to put it into a folder. So, you don't need to do that. A lot of people like seeing them all, keeping on top of the market, let them come in with their regular emails, but just in case it's a problem for you, you can do that. Okay, so can you say that something is just listed but not in the MLS? And the answer is you cannot, because you're using the MLS emails. So you can, if it has to be in the MLS for you to use the MLS emails. All right. Seller doesn't want it in the MLS, but here's a description. Call me for more info. Same issue, right? Seller and agent are motivated. A bonus to the agent if they bring an offer by June 30th. Can that happen? Nope. It's a conditional offer of compensation. Cannot be made through the MLS. We have a beautiful Cadillac or a computer swing set or whatever, driven by a little old man just to the market and back. Can you do that? And the answer is no. You cannot put in things for sale. It's not one ads. It's an MLS bulk email for our members. I want to recommend this painter or psychic or weight loss person or whatever. And the answer is no. You cannot do that. You can't promote, because everybody that has a business out there would get in touch with you saying, ooh, I understand you can help advertise me, put in my solar system, put in my roofing business, put in my painting business, put in my whatever, you know, can you do that for me as a friend? We'd be overrun with those recommendations. How about though, going the other way, I need help. I'm looking for a painter. Does anybody have recommendations? I need somebody that can come out tomorrow. The painter I normally use is on vacation for 2 weeks. Or just had an inspection done on this house and they recommend we have a geologist come check our soil conditions. I have no idea who to contact. Can anybody give me an idea who I should contact if I need a geologist? And you will have people come in saying, oh yeah, call so-and-so, and be very helpful. So it's okay to ask for service providers in related businesses. You're not going to say, does anybody know a psychic? But you know, something else would be okay. A related business, it's okay to ask for, but it's not okay to promote. So on the test, there's some true, false questions that all relate to this. So the mass email system is used for new listing status changes and infrequent updates on listings. So I hadn't mentioned that. So when you do listings, you don't want to every day say, let me tell you about this great property. And you're going to see some agents that abuse that. Like every week they'll do it for 6 months or something. But if there's a change, by all means, let people know the price just changed, something is different. And then you can infrequently use it just to promote in case people have forgotten about it. So is it acceptable to advertise cars, boats, and other consumer goods? No, it's not. Members may ask for referrals on property-related services. Yes, they can. Members may send recommendations for painters and things. No, you can't. Yep, that's where it went. Can you make conditional offers of compensation? Nope. And members may not advertise properties on the Flex bulk email system unless they're already entered in the MLS. So here's the exception. Remember I talked about the meeting on the second Thursdays? If you happen to have a listing coming up that's not yet in the MLS committee says it's okay to mention it there. So you could say, I've got a new listing that's going to be on the market soon. Let me tell you about it. That would be okay. But otherwise, it needs to be in the MLS. Now, I also mentioned we have the coming soon listing category. So you might have one that we're waiting for the painter, we're waiting for the photographer. We're not really ready to put on the market yet, but I want to let other agents know that 123 Main Street is going to be available for $1 million. Put it in as a coming soon. And it has a limited time frame that you can do that for, but you can put it in because one of the things that happens is you'll have it happen to you, I guarantee you. Someone will say, I just drove by 123 Main Street and there's a for sale sign. Tell me about it. And you look up in Flex and it's not there. It's because the agent signed the listing, but they're waiting for a painter or whatever, and they went ahead and put their sign up right away because they can do that legally because they've got a signed listing, but there's no information. So you're sitting there going, I don't know. Well, whose sign was it? Client says, I don't know. Can you even tell me what color it was? No, I just remember it said for sale. So now you have to drive out to 123 Main Street, read the sign, find out who the listing agent is, give them a call, and get information so you can call your client back to say, the first showing is going to be next Sunday at the open house. Here's the price. Here's the numbers of bedrooms and baths because you just found that out for them. But if it was entered into the system as a coming soon, now you've got it right there. So it's a really nice service for the other agents to put them in the coming soon. It will help your sellers get their property sold sooner. Let them know it's going to be coming on the market. It's going to be showable as of a certain time, et cetera. Yes?
For how long can it be in the coming soon section?
Yeah, I think you probably heard me say for a limited time, and I'm having a little memory loss on that specific issue. So we'll have to look that up in the rules. I can't tell you right now. But Ani can tell us it's I think it's like 15 days, something like that. It's not. Its intention is not that it be a lengthy period of time, and it is limited. And I apologize for, hey, I'm in charge of this stuff and I don't know. But I knew. It's just I forgot. That's what happens when you start forgetting things. I was going to say getting old. That couldn't be it. All right. So within your Flex main screens, you've got help on things. First off, for member services, if you want to pay your bill or if you want to do something within the member services, you want to change your profile, you want to change your email address, you want to set up a credit card for paying stuff or whatever, you can hit your member services button down there. That will take you right over what we call our IMS system. It's our internal membership system where you can then do all that functionality. And again, we have single sign-on because you're actually going to be leaving Flex MLS and going into our system that's operated by Rapatoni, but it will be seamless and you'll be able to go right into your account. And moving on. Nope, okay. So I hit 2 there. So contact MLS, that goes directly to Ani. You might need some help on something. She's here to help. She is willing, if you're saying, I've tried to look at some of these tutorials and I'm just not getting it. Can you help me figure out how to do a search properly? Whatever it happens to be, she will do one-on-one training with you. We used to have training classes, but we found that with all the help that's available online now, we don't really need them, but she's still available to help on a one-on-one basis. So you can contact her there. There's a help button there. At the time we put this together, there were 28 videos or webinars and forums and things and user guides. That number is probably double now. I don't know what the actual number is, but it's substantially more. So in many sites, you never click a help button because where does that ever go? Well, in Flex, hit that help button and it'll have tutorials for you on almost anything you want to do within the system. And you can just do them at your leisure when you want to know about that. Say you want to put together a market analysis so you can learn about doing a CMA. Maybe it's the first time you've ever searched. You want to know how to do that. You want to know how to do an automatic email setup. It's all in there. And it's all laid out really well, better than an instructor could do live for you here in a class. So it's because of that, our live instruction has gone away because they've done such a good job of putting this information available online. So it's under that help tab. We also have down the bottom frequently asked questions that Ani put together, the most common questions she was getting from our members, and said, well, let's just answer them right up front. So go there first. If you have a question about something, the answer is probably there because it's probably a common question that others have had. If it's not there, then contact Ani and she can help you out. So if you go into member services, you click there. It's going to take you over to your profile. You can make changes on that. You can put your photo in. You can do other things there. You can register for classes and events. So it might be you're saying, oh, I know there's a Tuesday tips and tastes that the education committee is putting together. It's the last Tuesday of the month. So last Tuesday they had one called Realtors that Rock, and they just had a group of top producing realtors in talking about what it is they do on a daily basis and why are they successful. Kind of helpful information. We'll sometimes have a panel of brokers come in and talk about here's liability issues we're seeing our agents doing and some risk management things you can do to make sure you don't get caught up in these things. Just different things. We always try to put on something with the idea of how can we help you be more successful? By the way, that's why we exist, is to help you be more successful in your business. So if you want to register for one of those classes, you just come down and hit that I'm going to register for a class. Oops. And then once you're there, it will go over and say, add it to the cart and then pay. For most of these things, there's no charge. So you add it to the cart and check out, but it's not going to cost you anything, but you have to go through those steps to get officially registered. So just be aware of that. You might want to go to, we're having a senior designation course that we're offering, a National Association class that's being offered first or second week of November. It's on our website. You can check it out there. That is a great class. A lot of people, when they're selling their home as a senior, if it's the last place they're selling from, there's more issues than just how much can they get there for their house. Can you really understand what they're going through if they're moving to a retirement home or something like that? And can you help them with those issues? It's a really cool class to help people with that. It's normally $200 a day. We're offering it right now at $100 a day, so $200, and it's a full designation course within the National Association. So that'll be here. So you can look at that. You can sign up for that one. That one, you add it to the cart, you would in fact have to pay. So on your profile, again, you put your picture in, how much experience you've had, what committees you've served on, whatever it is you want to put in there, you have the ability to set up a profile if anybody's going to look you up. Okay, so this is what I was mentioning about registering. You come in here, select the course, come down, select the date and time, then add it to the cart and pay. It's easy, and away you go. It used to be that we stocked all forms that SBAOR had. And that was tough once they got up to the point of having nearly 100 forms. Right now, there's probably at least 120. And they're all available to you through ZipForm. It is a member benefit for being a member of the Association of Realtors. If any of you are MLS only members, you don't have this benefit. It's a member benefit for the Association of Realtor folks. And you can buy ZipForms directly for about the same cost as joining the Association of Realtors. So if you're wouldn't make sense to not be a member and try to buy zip forms. But it's a great program where you have the ability to then email the things out to your client. There's a lot of agents use DocuSign, but digital ink is included within zip form. There's also Zip TMS for transaction management software is included. There's also Zip Vault, a place where you can keep all your documents and things, so you can have a totally paperless transaction and do it all through zip forms, which is a member benefit. It's not a free thing, it's a member benefit. It's being paid for through your dues. And one of the cool things for those of us in California is zip form was originally built by the California Association of Realtors. And we got to the point where we started selling it throughout the country, and all of these other states paid enough into it that we could offer it to our members at no additional cost to us at all in California. So now the National Association is offering it in all 50 states, and it has become a profit center for the California Association because they're now making the money. So we're getting it for free in California and actually making money rather than it costing us anything. So it's a cool thing. The CAR did a great job of managing businesses in the past to stay on top of things like that. Hey, our lockbox system is CentralLock. We had Supra before. CentralLock has all kinds of features we never had, like that feature I was talking about, the safety feature. It also has a keypad on there where you can give a one-day code for easy access. It works off your smartphone, or it has a smart card that works like a credit card, chip card. You can use either one, whichever you'd prefer. On your phone, make sure on your phone you download the RPR app to your phone, because if you do, it's integrated with CentralLock, and it might say when you open the house, oh, I see you're at 123 Main Street. Would you like the listing details for that? And you can say yes. It'll just take you right into that property on RPR and show you the information. So in case your client says, well, how long has this been on the market? It's been on the market 53 days. You know, whatever it happens to be. So you'd have that information right there at your fingertips. We're trying to get it hooked up directly into the Flex MLS app. They don't have that yet. They're working on that behind the scenes to make that integration for us. But in the meantime, it does have the integration to RPR, and all of our listing data we push to RPR so that you'll have it through them. So we have one-day codes. So you might be that you have a lockbox on and you need to have an appraiser come in. It's a vacant house and the appraiser doesn't have their own lockbox access. You can give them a code that you can generate from a computer. You don't have to go to the box. You can generate a code from the computer, give that to the contractor, to the appraiser, whoever it is that needs to get in, and they can have access. Now, just because the equipment has the capability doesn't mean that it's okay. Talk with your broker about what your company policy is. Are they okay with you giving out one-day codes because you're giving access to somebody into someone's home when you're not there? And is that okay? So just be aware of that. We've got the system that'll do it for you if you want to do it, but we're not setting the policy. Your broker is as to whether or not you should use that functionality. It also has abilities that the homeowner can open the shackle if you give them a code to do that, because it might be that it's lockbox by appointment, so they take the lockbox off when there's no showing schedule. They're showing a schedule, they put the lockbox on, then they go out to the park or something, so they can take the lockboxes on and off. Our old system, you never could do that. The agent would have to go there and do those kinds of things. And it has time controls where you can say no showings between 2 and 4 because that's when they're baby naps, all kinds of different things like that that the system's capable of. So by having the one-day codes, it eliminates this issue of having multiple lock boxes on that was happening before when you need to get a contractor into a vacant house or something. Let's talk quickly about signs. There's some do's and don'ts about your signs. First off, for open house signs, there's a downtown corridor that runs from Chapala to Anacapa, from Mitchell Train to the next intersection right up here, basically down to the ocean. State Street all the way down, Anacapa and Santa Barbara Street only go to the freeway. So what they're saying there is you can't put an open house sign within those areas unless the property is in those areas. what was happening is somebody would have an open house on the Riviera and they put signs right downtown on State Street, like State and Carrillo, because they know that's the busiest intersection in town. Let's put a sign right there and direct people with a dozen more signs to get to my open house 15 miles away. No. The city said after a while, they're trip hazards. You know, we're getting 20, 30 signs per intersection in the downtown corridor. This isn't working. So they passed an ordinance that says it's illegal for you to put an open house sign in that downtown corridor. So be aware of that. If you have a property, like we're in that corridor, so we could put an open house sign in front of our property when it has an open house, but you can't put them leading them in from State Street and things like that. Then the next thing on that is Caltrans has a rule that says you can't put signs in their right-of-way. So, okay, you can't put a sign on the freeway. That seems pretty obvious. But what about at the bottom of a, hopefully that'll come back to life. You can't put a sign at the bottom of a freeway off-ramp where it hits the street because that's their right-of-way, probably 20 feet either side of where that off-ramp comes down. And then the place you have to really think about is not just freeway off-ramps and things, but any state highway. Anybody ever heard of Highway 192? Well, it's Cathedral Oaks Road in Goleta. It's Foothill Road, then Mission Canyon, then Stanwood, then East Valley Road through Montecito, then it's Foothill Road in Carpinteria. That's a state highway. So what that means is you can't put signs anywhere along that highway in their right-of-way. Now on Sunday, the good news is on Sundays, they're rarely out. But where Caltrans is going to snag your signs is during broker caravan days on Thursdays or Fridays or something. So maybe you have an open house at Mission Canyon. And so right at Foothill and Mission Canyon Road, you put up a sign. Well, by doing that, you're in their right-of-way. You need to go about 20 feet up Mission Canyon to get out of their right-of-way. And they pick up signs fairly regularly. If you ever come out and say, somebody stole my signs, and then you realize, oh, I was there. I was on Cliff Drive, which is a state highway. I was on Las Positas, which is a state highway. I was on Mason Street between Milpas and wherever it goes farther east. That's a state highway. It's amazing how many state highways there are within the city area. If you have a sign on any of those, Caltrans can pick them up. So if they do, the Caltrans yard, if you take State Street across 101, where it's going toward becoming Hollister, take your first left as you pass 101 and go down to the very end, you'll end up in the Caltrans yard. And they have a storage area down there just filled with realtor signs. So all you have to do is go in and confess, apologize, and listen to a little lecture of why you should never do that again, and they'll give you your sign back. There's no fines or anything. So if any of you are new and you can't afford to buy open house signs, go down to Caltrans, confess, apologize, listen to a lecture, and then say, all of these in here are mine. And you get a whole bunch of signs.
Do you have like a printed guidelines for some of these areas that, like Cliff, for example, the one wouldn't think of as a highway?
The main thing is looking on a map. Because if you look here, see that 225 coming down there, that lower left-hand corner? That's going out to Cliff Drive. That's 225. So if you actually on the maps, it will show you the state highways. Now, Cliff's a bad example because the city either just has or in the process of converting Cliff Drive to a city street, and it'll no longer be a state highway. But 192 is a definite example of going all the way through. But they will have designations on them, but you can find them on the maps. But the main one is 192 that you need to be aware of. Okay, IDX is Internet Data Exchange. If you want information about that, we have our frequently asked questions. This lower right-hand box, by the way, is all informational stuff that you might need to know. Oops. So right above the frequently asked questions, there's IDX agreements, and then approved IDX vendors is in there. So you can get information there that gives you the ability to put the listings on your site. Now, if you have an IDX site, what you can't say on your website is search the MLS, because they're not searching the MLS, they're searching an IDX feed from the MLS. It is not full and complete data because it doesn't have private remarks and things like that, so it's not the MLS. And a seller has the right to say, I don't want my property displayed on the internet. So be aware of that too, because sometimes clients will say, I don't want the property in the MLS because I don't want people to know about my property being for sale. Well, wait a minute, we need to sell it and all the agents need to know it's for sale. How about we check the box that says don't display it out on the internet? Okay, that'll take care of it. So now you can list the property, put it in the MLS, check that box, and it doesn't go to Realtor.com, Zillow, IDX sites, etc. So an IDX site is not a complete listing of the MLS. It's only those that are allowing it. So you can't say search the MLS, say search for Santa Barbara properties, something like that, but be careful. Don't use the terminology search for the MLS because that's actually a violation, because it's not, you're not actually searching the MLS. So we have SBAOR.com, which is a search site. So if you don't have your own IDX site, you're saying, I want to send people somewhere. Well, you know, if you send them to Zillow or Realtor.com or someplace, they're going to have an ad in there directing the client to some other agent. So what we have is a site that only displays who the listing agent is on a property. So it's a lot safer to send them there. We have no advertising on our site whatsoever. So SBAOR.com is our public-facing site. SBAOR.org is our site for all of you. So you can do searches, and it has, nice thing, it has little banners on there showing which ones are new listings. So for the first week, it'll have a new listing banner on it. If they're going to be open, it'll have an open house listing like you're seeing on those. Nice, clean, crisp displays, large photos. Frankly, it has a better look, I think, than our MLS does for searching for properties. But you can send your consumers there, SBAOR.com. And with that, that concludes our session on the multiple listing service.